We might need to get Shane Long added to that montage soon. Hello and a very warm welcome to the latest episode of the Total Saints podcast. My name's Martin Starke and I'm joined by our panel of guests to discuss all the action from the last 7 days supporting Southampton Football Club. We're streaming this episode of TSP live on our Facebook and our Twitter pages, and it's also on our YouTube channel tonight. Now, if you're watching live on Facebook and YouTube, you can get involved in the conversation using the comments section. It's always great to hear your thoughts and any questions you've got for the guys tonight too. Coming up this week on the podcast, reaction to a solid home win against Everton. We're going to preview the game against Norwich at St Mary's on Friday. I've also got a long-awaited update on the panel's predictions league. And I have to be honest, a small confession from me as well. But first of all, let me introduce you to our regular TSP guests. They're waiting patiently on your screens. Let's go clockwise. So we'll start with Steve, top right. Steve Grant is the owner of SaintsWeb back in the UK. You enjoying the weather, Steve? Thanks for bringing the sunshine back.
Oh, it's lovely, isn't it?
Did you get back okay? Because I was worried about you with the flights this week.
Yeah, I mean, my original plan was to come back Friday. In hindsight, I'm very glad I chose to kind of bring that forward a few days. So I came back Monday in the end, where conditions were fine at the time of flying. So didn't get to feature on that wonderful YouTube live stream on Friday afternoon.
Big Jet TV.
Yes, that was extraordinary, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Seeing those planes coming in sideways into Heathrow was an eye opener.
But back safe and sound, which is good. It does make you wonder why we bother. We could have just gone to Southampton Airport and just streamed from the end of the runway, and then we'd have got some incredible figures. Bottom right on your screens, Glen de la Cour is the writer of League One -10. That's the weekly Saints blog. Your fence panel's all good this week, Glen? Were you okay?
No, it's quite interesting. So we've had some fence panels down, and so that was Friday night. And on Saturday, I was thinking, I'm not actually sure if they're ours or the neighbours. And I looked at it and I thought I could probably hammer these back together. So I delayed it, as you do, until Sunday. And then I got up in the morning and the neighbours had done it. So I'm going to keep really, really quiet about it. And, next Christmas card, I might mention it. But no, so happy days. But it is, as we speak, sort of gusting big time around here at the moment. So yeah. I'm waiting for bits to fly off the house because my house is quite old. The other thing I did just before the storm hit, I decided that it was the right time to take down the trampoline that I've been meaning to do for 5 years. I didn't fancy retrieving it from the road or Hedge End Village or something like that. So I was out there at 10:30 at night. It was a bizarre behaviour on my part, but no, and yeah, the other thing I've been doing, I've been mainly getting wet this week and laughing at people who have recently been out of the country and have just come back into it.
But your timing yesterday going to the game wasn't the best either, was it, Glen?
No, I managed to walk to the game, get absolutely soaked, and then for the next sort of 10 minutes, watched people coming in perfectly dry. So I did really, really well there. I got into the habit of coming in early when they were doing all the sort of COVID checks and all that sort of stuff. And I must revert back to my normal 5 to 3 arrival time and see how that one works out for me.
Also joining us, Dan Sheldon is the Athletics dedicated Saints reporter. You must have been pleased that it wasn't too far to travel yesterday, Dan. There were some horrendous journeys.
Yeah, it was. I was talking to someone in the press box. It took them a good 3.5, 4 hours in what is normally an 1.5 hour journey. So yeah, I was over the moon. It was just a short 20-minute ride down the M27.
All good, all good. Well, the biggest hello and thank you is reserved to our patrons wherever you might be listening or watching this week. Welcome to episode 187 of the Total Saints podcast. So a dominant display at St Mary's saw Saints beat Everton 2-0 in the reverse of the opening day fixtures. Steve, let's start with you. I know it was a bit of a trek for you to get to the game. What did you make of the first trip back to St Mary's?
Yeah, it was good. First 10 minutes, I thought, oh, God, we haven't turned up here yet, have we? Got away with a couple of iffy penalty shouts. I thought that handball, let's be honest, we've seen them given. So I think we might have slightly dodged a bullet there. But once we got over that early sort of first 10 minute spell, we were pretty much completely dominant. And how much of that is down to us, how much of that is down to Everton, difficult to tell. But we did everything we needed to do apart from stick the ball in the back of the net. Jordan Pickford is their man the match by a country mile. I mean, I think you probably give him like an 8 or 9 out of 10, and everybody else on their team maybe a 2 if you're being generous. But yeah, our finishing wasn't quite up to scratch. Our decision making, because a lot of the time in the second half we had a lot of counter attacks where we were just picking them off at will, but we were either kind of overplaying it or not making the right decision in the final third. And to be honest, that sort of dominance we should have been putting 5 or 6 past them, I think. So that's probably the only negative from the whole game. I mean, Fraser Forster, I hope they charged him a ticket price.
Clean gloves
for being such a spectator. I mean, no shots on target from them in 90 minutes. I don't think they even got close to having one, did they? Yeah, very very poor from them. But it's kind of what I'm expecting to see from them for the majority of Frank Lampard's time. They'll have a few games where their sort of vibes over tactics mantra works for them, and particularly at home they'll get the crowd behind them because they've got some good attacking players when they can be bothered. But when they kind of haven't got that backing or something goes against them, they folded like a pack of cards yesterday. So yeah, I don't think they'll go down, but I think they're going to be sort of looking over their shoulder certainly for most of the rest of this season, I think. But we were excellent. As I say, the only disappointing thing is we didn't claw back a bit more of the goal difference, I think.
Would have been good. Glenn, it seemed to be quite a textbook win, if ever there's such a thing. What were your thoughts on the match yesterday?
Yeah, very similar to what Steve said. I think we were excellent. I think they were terrible. It was as comfortable as it ever is for us at home. I started going at a time where Everton was a game that we always lost, home and away, and then we kind of turned that around and started winning a few of the home games. We've always been awful at Goodison, as everyone knows. But I'm always expecting a hard game. I'm always expecting them to be a sort of physically tough team to play against, and to go into that. I mean, when the Alan got booked, that seemed to be that was their midfield gone as soon as they took him off. I mean, going in with a sort of 2-man central midfield of Andre Gomez and Donny van der Beek against Romeo and Ward-Prowse, who were just different level compared to those two. And that was the thing about the second half, is that our midfield was totally dominant. All Everton were reduced to doing was launching the ball long towards Calvert-Lewin if he got his head to it, which he's good in the air, but he was getting his head to it, but he was 35 yards out. And there's nothing you can do as a centre forward when the ball's being launched in from so far away. Their wide players, Gordon and Iwobi, didn't get up the wings at all. There were no crosses from sort of near our goal. So it was really, really comfortable. Even at 1-0, I didn't feel like we were ever going to concede a goal. You don't like to say that, of course, because it can only take a lucky break of the ball. And then the miracle of Shane Long happened, which was just one of those amazingly bizarre things, because you've brought on a non-scoring striker just to run around and put pressure on the defence, and he ends up scoring. So we all know Shane Long hasn't got many days left in the sun as a Saints player. So for him to come on and have the crowd singing his name and score an important goal is a really good thing for him. Loved that moment, and but I couldn't believe the contrast with how well organised all over the pitch we were, and how insipid, I guess is the word, Everton were, especially in that second half. They reminded me a little bit of Man United when we played them, but obviously Man United have got much better players. But for Everton to have spent as much money as they've spent over the last 4 or 5 years and have that 11 on the pitch, that's quite possibly the worst back four I've ever seen. And then when you combine it with the lack of midfield protection in away games against anyone half decent, they've got no chance. So yeah, good day for us, bad day for them. It'll be interesting to see how media darling Lampard works out over the next few months.
Dresses that up. Yeah, there's someone called Shane Long watching on YouTube right now. I don't know if that's the Shane Long, but parody account. But thanks and good evening. Hi to Stuart as well. Hi to Mark. Dan, you actually called 2-0 last week. So was it as straightforward performance as you thought it would be?
After the first 10 minutes, it was, even more straightforward than I half expected. As Glen said, you kind of always think Everton are going to be a tough game. I remember the first game of the season where Southampton obviously went ahead and ended up losing. And I thought if Benitez was still in charge, it probably would have been a more difficult game on Saturday. But as Steve said, you think Frank Lampard does kind of strike you as the sort of vibes over tactics. And maybe his team talk was, let's get at them for 10 minutes and take it. And then it got to 10 minutes and the players just looked around and were like, what next? What should we do now? And just had no idea. And it was a point I raised to Ralph, actually. I didn't realise until I looked, but since Ralph took charge in December 2018, if you exclude Duncan Ferguson, Everton have had 4 managers, which is crazy when you think 4 managers in 3 years. And you look at the players they've got, there's a kind of mixture of Ancelotti, Silva, and you just think it's just insane. A team could spend $500 million and get worse. I mean, it was shocking, really. You think it's just, for me, Saturday was an example of a manager with a plan. The players are well drilled. They know exactly what they're doing, and a team that are just in an absolute crisis who have no idea what to do. And you think, I saw some fans were kind of concerned about Dele Alli, thinking, he might have a similar game that he had against Saints. But I mean, he was shocking. He was, if you're charging Fraser Forster for a ticket, you may as well charge Dele Alli for one at the same time, because it was just terrible. They were
I don't think he passed the ball to a teammate.
No,
seriously, 5 or 6 times.
And I don't want to dwell on how bad Everton were, because I thought Southampton, Southampton was so good it made Everton so bad, if that makes sense. It wasn't a case Everton didn't turn up. It was just a case of Southampton were far too good, far too organised. And as Steve said, really could have been 3-4-5, but for Jordan Pickford, who made some good stops.
Yeah. Let's talk through the events. Let's start with that starting lineup then, Steve. Obviously, just the one change with Perot testing positive for COVID. But when you've got Tino coming in, it's not a bad swap.
Yeah, I mean, we looked like we weren't affected by that at all. I mean, obviously, that was our first choice fullback pairing for a significant part of the first half of the season, up until Tino got his injury. So yeah, I don't think that phased the players at all. They were, I mean, as we've said, they're well drilled. They know what their roles and responsibilities are. And I mean, the only person it might have affected would have been Walker Peters having to swap sides again. And so the work that they would have done all week on the training ground, he would have ordinarily been preparing for facing up to someone on the opposite side. So he's got to slightly change his plans, but I mean, he was outstanding, I thought. I mean, admittedly not up against an awful lot, but defensively was untroubled, and I mean, he's almost retired Seamus Coleman there with that display. I mean, he just ran him ragged, and it was good to see him willing to run at players. Because I think when he's played on the left, sometimes he's been slightly reluctant to take his fullback on, largely because he's not overly confident on his left foot, I don't think. But because they were showing him inside and giving him all the space he wanted, he was more than happy to kind of accept that freebie. And the number of times he was cutting inside, and obviously had 2 really good shots in the second half that were both well saved by Pickford. One took a really sharp deflection that I mean, let's be honest, we've seen both McCarthy and Forster concede those goals in recent times. So that was a really, really good stop, I thought. But yeah, Walker Peters was excellent. Tino didn't really have an awful lot to do because so much of our attacking threat was coming down the left-hand side. Tino was only really involved kind of sporadically. I mean, obviously he got the assist for Shane's goal, and I actually thought he'd shanked the cross a little bit. It looked like he'd given it far too much air, and that Pickford would just come and pluck it out of the air. But I think I don't know whether Pickford was, I don't know if he was a bit frazzled or something by the shambles that was going on in front of him for the previous 82 minutes, but left it alone, and that gave Shane the opportunity to win the header.
Well, he probably thought it was Shane Long, it'd be all right.
Yeah, he never scores.
Little did he know. It's a Shane Long's contract season right now.
Leaping like a salmon. Glenn, the team's kind of picking itself at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I've said the last few weeks. Well, since the Tottenham game, when I saw that, I know Perot was playing in that game, but when I saw that 11 on the pitch in that formation, it just something clicked for me. That's our best 11 in that formation, and it's interesting now, with the exception of Tino, probably. I'm thinking that if you change that 11, because it is playing at a very good level at the moment, if you change anyone in that 11, it kind of does drop away a little bit. For example, if Elyounoussi and Armstrong are missing, you're then looking at Gineppo, Walcott, Redmond coming in, and Ward-Prowse and Romeo were both superb yesterday. So you wouldn't want either of those missing. The forward combination has clicked. Bednarek, I thought, had a very good game yesterday as well. So it was interesting to see how they, the two centre halves, I thought, handled Calvert-Lewin superbly. They kind of realised, Salisu, after the first 20 minutes, he kind of realised that, okay, I'm not going to win every ball in the air. I just need to be all over him like a rash when the ball drops and just make it really, really difficult for him. And Calvert-Lewin, for the second year running against us, and I don't know if you remember last year, Vestergaard just headed everything and Calvert-Lewin didn't touch the ball. And yesterday, I was just really disappointed in him for a player that's got quite a big reputation. He didn't try and pull over to Walker-Peters' side to compete against a smaller player. He just carried on battling, trying to win these balls in the air. But
second year running, he got booked for a slightly iffy-looking late challenge on one of our centre backs as well.
Yeah, he's so. I just thought it was that team at the moment picks itself, and if we can keep everybody fit, which is obviously not possible in this era of COVID. I mean, it would have been interesting to see what if Perot would have kept his place. Dan touched on it last week. It would have been ridiculous to leave him out after the two performances he had against Tottenham and Man United. So I would like to have thought that Perot would have stayed in the team, but with testing positive for COVID, I would say it's unlikely he's going to be sort of ready for the game on Friday. Even if he's sort of clear by then, he's probably going to have missed a bit of training, etc. So hopefully we can go into the Norwich game with the same 11 and get a similar result.
I think that's what you want to see, though, not Perot catching COVID, but we kind of said last week, didn't we, that Tino has to earn that spot back.
Yeah.
And you think I thought in the second half he kind of showed glimpses. Well, both in the first and the second half, he showed glimpses of the Tino we saw kind of pre-Aston Villa. I always thought that Aston Villa game, he wasn't great, and then his form tailed off, and then he got injured on Boxing Day. But I thought he's shown glimpses of what he was really good at. He played some nice turns on the sideline, managed to get away from his marker, and the cross was good. And that's what you want to see. You want to see him coming into the team if Perot's not fit and making an impact. And he's now said to Ralph, look, I've come in, we've won 2-0, clean sheet, first one since that game against Villa. I've got an assist. Leave me out next week. That's exactly what you want.
Could have had a goal as well.
I still thought Tino was at times a little bit reluctant to run forward when he had the chance. I mean, I know it's not as simple as running forward every time you've got it. They've got these patterns of play where they want to feed the ball into Armstrong or whatever. But yeah, sometimes it looked to me in the first half in particular that he still looked like he was kind of feeling his way back in. But he's, what is he, 19 now? So he's getting really old, of course. So he's 19. He's still finding his way in the Premier League. So you can't expect him to be brilliant all game, every game. And it was a solid game for him, and I think he'll only get better again. But whether he stays in the team for the next few weeks, who knows?
Wait and see. Well, we'll get onto the goals in just a sec. Dan, it was a pretty even first half, not really much to talk about, but for once it seemed like it was Saints that found that extra gear in the second half. Is that what pleased Ralph the most when you spoke to him after the game?
I think that the clean sheet, to be honest, really pleased Ralph. I think he was kind of over the moon with that. He alluded to the fact that of all the good performances they've had recently, the only thing missing has been a clean sheet. You have to go back to November, don't you, until their last one. So he was delighted with that. He didn't kind of go as big and say it was one of the best performances he's seen as he did kind of in the Tottenham game. I think, as Steve said at the top of the podcast, they left a bit out on the field in terms of finishing chances. You could argue Brozier probably could have had a couple, and I don't want, this isn't a complaint against Brozier because he's been excellent, but sometimes he shoots and you think a pass maybe isn't the worst option in the world.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's the goals he scored this season, he's more than entitled to take that shot. But sometimes you do think there was probably a better option from the angle you were at. But yeah, I think, Ralph, you can't not be happy with a kind of comfortable 2-0 win over Everton. And the clean sheet will really kind of cheer him up, I think, going into what we all said were favourable fixtures. So yeah, really good for him.
Let's talk about the goals then, Steve. Stuart Armstrong, great finish to beat the England goalkeeper. Arguably, he could have done better, the keeper, but Stuart Armstrong is just in the form of his life at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'm not wanting to be sort of Jordan Pickford's number one fan or anything, but I think the whole getting beaten at the near post sort of trope is a little bit slightly lazy, I think, because the precision that Armstrong's put on that shot at pace and with a defender partially blocking the view, I think it's just hard for him to get down to that. I mean, you've got to still kind of expect the ball to cover any part of the goal. So he's got to set himself up in a, I think it was in a reasonable position, but Armstrong's just hit it really well, and he's put it really low down. I think if it had been maybe a foot off the ground, I reckon the keeper's got a chance of saving it because he doesn't have to go down as far. And anywhere sort of further away from that post, and I think he probably stops it as well. So yeah, the precision on that is extraordinary. I thought that was another break that we were going to kind of make a bit of a mess of, because it looked like when Romeo squared it across to Adams, it looked like he might have just got it kind of trapped under his feet a little bit, which a lot of players did over the course of the game, which I think was probably down to the wind and the rain that we'd had over the previous sort of 36, 48 hours or so. And yeah, a few balls were kind of sticking in the surface, or players kind of overrunning themselves like ahead of the ball. But yeah, dug it out, and yeah, great finish from there. And yeah, as you say, he's in great form. Just when Armstrong is fit and playing, we just look a completely different team.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's so frustrating that that he's missed so many games over the last couple of years, because we get ourselves into these little runs of great form, and then he'll get injured, and it coincides with us suddenly tailing off. Now I don't know. I assume there's probably. I mean, let's be honest. Saints medical team will be doing everything they possibly can to keep all our players fit. And I don't think there's anything special they can necessarily do for Stu to be sort of more available.
Don't send him on international duty.
Well, yeah, when that's an option.
Well, that
always seems to be. It's always the Scotland thing, isn't it? Come back injured or come back with COVID. One of the two.
Yeah.
Well, James is watching on YouTube. James says, "What do we need to do moving forward to ensure that Stuart Armstrong stays on the field? Because
stop him going on international duty."
So is that as simple as that, man? Because one of the other things is, can he do 2 games in a week? Where we've got. Well,
Ralph's always said he can't do 3 games in a week. He's not the type of player that can do 3 in a week, and I think that's the only thing I think he's a top player. And the only thing that's holding him back is just that he hasn't got a 38-game season in him. And because I looked at all the other appearances, he's only made 12 this season in the Premier League. I think his 33 is his highest number since he joined the club in 2018. But yeah, he had so much, I think. And isn't there that crazy stat that I think I looked into as well? They've not won a game without him in the squad since November 2019.
Yeah,
something like that's mad, isn't it?
Which is crazy. I mean, he's obviously not responsible for all of those wins, bearing in mind he's come on the pitch in like the 90th minute at times. But
just to keep the stat going.
Yeah, he's just got, I think we've said before, of all the number 10s, they're all maybe good at one thing, whereas he's kind of good at all of those things that they're good at, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think he's quicker than people may give him credit for. He's far more intelligent than the other number 10s. The way he understands what the fullback is going to be doing as well is really impressive, I think, because I looked at his touch map after the game yesterday, and the number of times he's kind of getting into that pocket of space just around the outside of the box on the right and leaving the flank free for Tino is just, it just illustrates exactly what Ralph is doing with those number 10s and the fullbacks. And when he's in the team, they're just so much better. And it's hard to quantify sometimes because you think, well, they've got other good wingers, but none of them are as good as he is. He has got the passing, he can create chances, and more importantly, he can score. And it's like the others just don't seem to do that. And it's the kind of progressive ball carrots as well. He's so impressive at that. I think him and Elyounoussi is a really nice combination. I think Elyounoussi can frustrate you at times because he hasn't quite got that pace.
Yeah.
To get in behind when he's got a chance to kind of run into space. He hasn't always got the pace to do it, but he's very good on the ball. But with Armstrong, he has got that pace and he can beat a man. And long may he stay fit, because Southampton are a completely different team when he's in it.
Yeah. Glenn, other goal, Shane Long, almost 2 years to the day, leaping like a salmon at the back post. But was it 3 Everton players, I think? I mean, subbed on the 82nd minute, scores on the 83rd, and the crowd goes absolutely wild.
Yeah, that was a great moment, as I said earlier. What's impressive about it is that he got up really early. You know, it was a bit of a loopy cross, as Steve said, and he got up early, and again, pitching into Seamus Coleman's need to retire. He didn't even get off the ground. Long was up early, so Coleman couldn't do anything about it. And it's just he's always had a good leap. He's always been decent in the air, and it was a really good header. There's a lovely angle from behind the post where the ball actually goes in, where you see Pickford turn around and he's watching the line of the ball as it goes in, as it just sort of goes inside the post, and you just see Pickford's face. It's great, but no, I thought Pickford had a great game, to be fair. But it's great for Shane Long. It's interesting that he got brought on in front of Adam Armstrong. That seems to be a change in the pecking order that's gone on. Adam Armstrong seems to have fallen well out of favour. I thought that when we played the game against Coventry, when, to be honest, the forwards were all rubbish in the first half, and it was Armstrong that got hooked off, when it could just as easily have been Shane Long. But Ralph has obviously got a bit of an issue with him at the moment. So yeah, Shane come on and he scored the goal, and it was great. Just one final thing I'd like to say on the first goal, actually. Big assist to the referee, because he waved play on when Elyounoussi nicked the ball off of I think it was Gomez. Yeah. Gomez just hauled him down, and it's kind of a yellow card free kick. But because the referee let it go, it then went Romeo, Adams, Armstrong, goal. So if Mike Dean had done that, he'd have been celebrating, wouldn't he? He'd have been giving it the big one, you know.
Well, Mike Dean would have given them the free kick.
Yeah. Was it Michael Keane in the first game that played an errant pass?
Yeah.
Yes.
He basically got his pocket picked.
Got his feet
as the last man.
Right, yeah. I couldn't remember if he'd played a pass or he just had the ball nicked off him by Shea Adams, but he must have had the ball nicked off him by Adams.
Yeah.
I was just pleased for the first goal yesterday that it was that Adams and Romeo went the other way around, because you know that Romeo would have had a shot from the edge of the box and that goes straight into the stand.
Yeah, he had one in the first half, didn't he? And it's just
incredible, wasn't it?
Every time you just
that's
like, oh gosh.
I saw I had a look on Understat for the sort of shot map and stuff from the game yesterday, and that one was rated as a 0.01 xg, which I thought was still very generous.
Just a word on that partnership, because you can see these partnerships forming all over the pitch, Steve. You've got obviously Tino and Carl Walker-Peters at the back. We talked about the centre backs, and you've got the two up front. But that Romeo and James Ward-Prowse, once they hit their stride yesterday, you kind of felt like this is only going to go one way, isn't it? If they're both on form and they're up for it, then they were just dominating yesterday.
Oh yeah, I mean they absolutely bullied them. I mean, as Glenn said, as soon as Alan got that book in, 15 minutes in, I mean, of what use is he in that team? And as a midfield 2 up against our midfield 2+2, I guess, because they can all play in the middle. It was just it was just embarrassingly one-sided. I mean, it was genuinely like playing against like a youth team or a non-league side, that just the difference in levels and the difference in knowing what they needed to do in that midfield, and having that partnership and the knowledge of what each one of them is going to do at any given moment, so you can adjust your own position to make sure that that all bases are covered. And I mean, Everton didn't have that at all. And with those midfield players, then they're unlikely to ever have that. And they missed a Cour, but he's still not a holding midfielder, really. He's your sort of box to box athletic player who will give you the energy that they didn't have yesterday. But he's not going to be sitting in front of the back four and giving them any protection. I mean, as Dan said earlier, like half £1 billion spent on that squad in the last 5 or 6 years, and it's like, and this is what you've come up with, lads. I mean, it's just pathetic that a football club could spend that much money on absolutely nothing.
The thing I love about games like that is when someone like Dele Alli plays, where all the Saints fans were going, we should be signing him. He's exactly the sort of player we should be going for. Then he turns
Not this one.
With the exception of those on this podcast, that's the sort of player we should be going for if we want to show some ambition. And then absolutely,
ambition is a horrible word in football, and it's spouted largely by people who basically just want people to spend money on anything. It's basically just footballing magpies, people who like shiny things. I mean, actual ambition comes in many different formats, and it doesn't need you to spend or commit to spending the thick end of £40 million on a player who doesn't really look like he can be bothered anymore.
It's very philosophical, Steve. I like that. Glenn, just a word on the front two, Adams and Brozier. I know Dan mentioned it earlier on. Brozier perhaps needs to be a little bit less selfish in front of goal, but you get the impression if you look at
I'm not sure he does need to be less. I just think there are times I didn't say he should be less selfish. I think there are times he may have better options.
Centre forward, have a shot.
The next six, when you look at the next 6 games, the defence, they're going to be absolutely bricking it, aren't they? When we've got those two playing and firing.
Well, I imagine that we're going to come up against some teams, certainly teams like Burnley, who are going to sit deep, and it will be another sort of challenge because it will be much more difficult to sort of pick our way through them. And this is where players like Elyounoussi and Armstrong are going to be key to be able to pick a pass through. Back in the day when we were last really decent, when we had Graziano Pella up front, if a team sat deep against us, we could go over the defence basically, because he was so good at shielding the ball and picking the ball out of the sky sort of thing. That's an area that Brozier needs to work on, because sometimes he's sort of 6'4" standing and then 6'1" when he jumps. Sometimes he doesn't quite get the timing right, and he doesn't quite sort of have the physicality to hold off players. So I think these next few games will be really good for him in his development, playing against the likes of Burnley and stuff like that. We got Norwich up next, and they've got on paper their defence is as bad as Everton. So I think they'll be slightly worried about what we can do. But those two, it's again, Shea Adams illustrated just how much work he's prepared to do. I mean, the Saints social media team, they've clipped up and put out that challenge where he ran back to absolutely trash the Everton left back. And he did so much good work defensively, and that's the thing. We're talking about Everton and their collection of Dele Alli's and Van der Beek and Alex Iwobi and things like that. Yesterday was a classic example of a team against a ragtag bunch of individuals. I mean, their team, Alex Iwobi cost twice as much as our record signing, and what players have Everton got that would fit in our system and make it better? Maybe Richarlison at a push, but I'd struggle on yesterday's show, and I'd struggle to be remotely interested in any of the others. Pickford. Yeah, well, we need a goalkeeper, don't we? Probably next season. see if he's interested. But yeah, but going back to our two strikers, that they're only going to get better and better. And as I said earlier, it's a nice problem to have. But those two have proved themselves to be now a cut above what else we've got. And if one of them is missing, then there's a definite downturn, because at the moment, and we all love him, of course, Shane Long is the next alternative.
Shane Long's on fire, yeah.
He is, yeah.
Before we get on to the game on Friday, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. Nick's actually mentioned that he's watching online. He says, do you think we can reach 9th by the end of the season? Is the top 10 finish back on? Because a few weeks ago, we were kind of going, it's not going to happen at all. But do you think it might happen now, Dan? Is it possible?
I think I didn't think it pre-Man City. I didn't think it was, because I didn't think they'd get as many points as they did from those games. But when you look at the cushion, I know the teams below them do have a game in hand and whatnot, but I don't see why not. I think Southampton from game to game are only getting better, and the opposition are now only getting weaker. And there will be the argument, of course, that the teams they're now going to be playing are kind of, bar Aston Villa, are kind of fighting to stay in the league. So they're going to bring different tests. But ultimately, I think Saints are just so in their own lane at the moment. They just seem to be going through the gears and just getting better week by week. I honestly do think top 10 is most certainly on the cards. To be honest, I'm not going to sit here and say I'd be really disappointed if they didn't get it, because I still think they've improved massively since last season in different areas of their game. But I do think it's an opportunity now that has opened up. I personally would just love to see them finish above clubs like Villa, Leicester, basically the clubs that sign their players. I'd love to see them finish above, really, in a kind of selfish way. But yeah, I don't think you can sit here and
all
say
these teams that won the transfer window.
Yeah, precisely. And on just going back to Shay Adams, I don't want to labour on that point, but he is a top professional, and I'm so happy for him, because he really has stepped up this season, and I think it'll be brilliant when he does finish the season with more goals than Danny Ings. I think that would be a kind of big pat on the back for himself.
Be awesome. Glenn, is the top 10 on, do you think? Or is this where we stuff it up?
Yeah, well, before these 5 games that we've just had, I think we all thought we'll maybe get 2 points from that lot, and we've got however many it is, 8 or 9.
Yeah.
The next 5 will kind of dictate whether we've got a shout of finishing 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, or we'll end up 14th. Because if we drop the ball and only pick up maybe 3 points out of the next 5 games, we could get anything between 3 and 15. Let's be honest. And that's the difference between challenging up near the European places or falling away to 14th. So yeah, ask me in 4 or 5 weeks' time. But I think Saints are playing well enough at the moment. You just expect it to continue, but our experience tells us that it doesn't, and there will be a crashing back down to earth at some point. Next game up is Norwich. We've already lost to them once, and they're garbage. So who's to say that's not going to happen? I mean, with our home form, their away form, next Friday should be a gimme, but it never works out like that. So let's see. I've over the years I've grown very realistic about things.
We've been following them for too long, haven't we?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Anyway, great question. Thanks, Nick. I must just say as well, thanks to Luke Digweed, who sent us a link to a song called The Ballad of Shane Long. I don't know if you've heard this. I assume you haven't, on YouTube, and asked if we could play it tonight.
Why don't you sing it instead?
Well, sadly, due to copyright reasons, we can't play it and we can't sing it. Maybe we could share the link. If we had time, but we need to get on to Norwich, unfortunately. So Friday night, St Mary's, Norwich under the lights. What have you made of Norwich under Dean Smith, Steve? Is it going to be a different game to that last one?
Well, I hope
was
so.
he in charge? His first game?
He was, yeah.
Yes, it was.
His first game, wasn't it?
Yeah, because we had Dean Smith back to back, didn't we? Villa and,
so this would be the third,
Norwich.
Yeah.
I mean, they've improved, but that was, I mean, they'd have done pretty well to have got any worse than they were. And I mean, they've picked up some points. They've started winning a couple of games. They gave Liverpool a bit of a scare yesterday, in that they took the lead. But I mean, Liverpool were, from what I've seen of the game, were always well on top, and it was a proper sort of smash and grab 1-0 lead. But that's the sort of thing you got to worry about against these sort of sides. I mean, Dean Smith's no mug. He'll formulate a plan that he thinks can beat us, and ultimately, it's one of those where is there. I mean, if their game plan is the same as it was against us last time, i.e., hope that our goalkeeper throws 2 in the net, then
oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that. I'd want that from my mind.
Then okay, we should. At the end of the day, we're better than Norwich. We should we should be looking to win, and I suspect they'll try and be defensive, but they're not very good at defending. So Norwich's perversely, Norwich's best chance of winning is to try and outscore us, even though we have a better attack than them, we have a better defence than them, we have a better midfield than them. But it's those margins that we found in the game at Carrow Road where we threw that game away, absolutely tossed it away. And actually, I think that works in our favour, because you can be damn sure that Ralph will be reminding those players, look what you did against this ragtag bunch, bottom the league, had only won 1 game all season when you went up there and gave them a 3-point present. So actually, I think if we're remotely on it from a mental perspective, I think I don't see any issues.
You're all missing a key point as well. Nick's picked it up on Facebook. I saw in the comments. It's a Friday night game
under the lights.
Guess who? When was the last time Angus Gunn played in the Premier League at St Mary's? It's going to be a good night for Southampton. It's got to be
a good night.
Matt says, "Can you imagine?"
Matt says, I'm travelling 120 miles for this game on Friday, so we better beat them. Is Matt going to be all right, Glenn? What's his nerves going to be like? What sort of game are you expecting on Friday?
He should be. I mean, I've got some notes in front of me, and the first thing I wrote down was Angus Gunn is their first choice goalkeeper now. It's interesting with Angus Gunn because, we were talking the other week about our goalkeeper situation and, which one we're going to keep, which one we're going to let go. Are we going to get rid of both of them? The idea was obviously Angus Gunn was bought and he was going to be the first choice goalkeeper at this point. They obviously thought at the time when the 2 senior goalies' contracts expire, Angus Gunn would take over. They didn't know at the time that he had the presence of a lettuce. And it was just... he was just not going to show signs of developing. I got to be a little bit careful what I say about Angus Gunn because I've had his dad getting very angry with me on Twitter before. that was a great moment. So yeah, Brian Gunn, not my biggest fan. Don't think he reads my blog with any regularity. I hope he doesn't anyway. The only thing that says that we won't win on Friday is sod's law, isn't it? Because logic says that we will. Sod's law says that Angus Gunn will have a brilliant game, but there's no real reason to...
I'd love to know what the odds are for a 9-0 Southampton win. Imagine conceding back-to-back games at St Mary's 9-0. It would be... I mean, that's got to be the most positive spin you can put on.
Did he ever play a game for us after that?
Not in the Premier League,
he played the cup games. So he played that game at Spurs where we lost 3-2. That replay.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, actually, no, he'd have played the home game in that as well.
Yeah. He played 3 FA Cup games after that, then went out on loan. Because I was just checking on Soccer Base before. I'm sure the last time he played at St Mary's in the Premier League game, he shipped 9.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look elsewhere in the Norwich team, their defence against Liverpool was Grant Hanley and Ben Gibson. Ben Gibson was sort of promising 15 years ago. So he's a player who's never really proved it. And Grant Hanley is one of the worst centre backs I've ever seen in the Premier League. So slow. He's a horrible mistake every game. So the defence can certainly be got at. They've got the Chelsea lad Gilmore in midfield, who, if you let him play, he's a very good player. But will he be able to do it against Romeo and Ward-Prowse? We'll have to wait and see. Pookie up front, if they give him the right service, he's capable of scoring goals at this level. So it's not going to be that easy. But they're bottom of the league for a reason. And answer the original question from whoever it was who sent it in, 120 miles should be I assume it's 120 miles back again as well. So it should be it should be 240 miles of with a happy result at the end of it.
All right. Well, let's get on to predictions. I'm not going to take 9-0 as a prediction unless anyone really wants to go for that. My little confession, first of all, is that we've been doing this for a while now. I didn't realise that I was supposed to keep score each week of the predictions and who was doing what. So a massive shout to producer Alex, who's had to sit back through 22 podcasts this week to try and work out who said what and what the scores were. You'll be interested to know, Dan, you also got the Everton game right because you called 2-0. Which means you're on 18 points. Glen, you're on 11. Steve, you're on 9. And I think I gave up after the second or third week. So that's kind of where we are. And I'll make sure I keep a note of these as we go forward. So feel free to stick your predictions in the comments. Dan, I'll let you go first as you got it right last week. You going for 9-0? Or?
I'm going to go to bed dreaming of Angus Glen conceding another 9 goals at St Mary's. But I think I'll go 3-0.
Another clean sheet. Steve?
Yeah, I think it's weird playing a game against the bottom of the table and saying that I think we'll be really fired up for this. But yeah, I think they were very annoyed after that game at Carrow Road, and I think they will want to set the record straight. So yeah, I'm going for 4-0.
4-0. Glenn, do you think we'll keep another clean sheet?
I do, and I was going to predict exactly the same score that Dan's predicted, but obviously I need to try and catch him up. So
this is Glenn. I don't care about this game at all.
Yeah.
This is playing for tactics now.
I say I don't care until I'm losing, then I care. So yeah, I'll go for a 3-1 win.
All right. Well, the good news is I've written those down, and we'll be able to add those in next week to see how we get on. So, right. Thanks, chaps. That's 47 minutes we've done, and we haven't had to stop for energy gels or a drink. So,
cool.
So all good.
I've got cramp.
Before we go, a big shout out to some of our loyal and our much loved patrons. Obviously, in the Matt Letizia tier, we've got Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, and Phil Cook. Francis Benali tier, we've got Nick Reed and Matt Hall. Thank you for your support. You can find out more about becoming a TSP patron and the benefits that come with that over on the website. Thank you to Dan. Thanks to Steve. Thanks to Glenn. Have a great week. Enjoy the Friday night football. Don't forget to follow this podcast wherever you're listening on the socials. It's at Total Saints Pod. You'll find us on Twitter and Facebook. I think we're on TikTok now as well.
Good.
So yeah, track us down there because there's a lot of work going into that. Thank you for listening. Stay safe in all the strong winds we've got this week, and we'll see you again next week.